Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this webinar focusing on OTT commercial TV broadcast strategies. We will be talking about how broadcasters can get the most advertising revenue out of all platforms. And I have the pleasure to welcome with us three key speakers of the industry. We have Mark Pryor, who's the product manager, dynamic ad insertion of Irdeto, who's our sponsor today for this session. Then we have Prasad Sanagavarapu, Chief Business Officer of NVD, and Famida Kasim Surti, who's CEO of DSTV Media. We will be having a 45-minute discussion later on with all three of them, where we'll be discussing key points in terms of how the advertising industry is slowly heading towards digital features, and what are the technical challenges of ad insertion for broadcasters, what are the lessons learned from the industry so far when it comes to addressable TV, and how are we going to build capacities for the future to accompany the markets with the evolution of consumer habits. Before that, I would just like to remind the audience that you can ask questions during the session. You will be able to interact with our speakers, and I will take the questions and ask them during the session or at the end. So you can feel free to share your thoughts and questions. Right now we're going to start with a short market overview presented by my colleague Raphaël Delbecq, who's our market analyst for the APAC region. She will be presenting the video advertising market outlook and forecasts. Why are broadcasters migrating towards direct-to-consumer models with a few selected examples. Also, the new opportunities brought by digital media and all of that with a focus on APAC and MENA markets and prospects. So please, Raphaël, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ophélie, for this nice introduction. So before we start with a short market overview focusing on APAC advertising supported services, a few words on Dataxis. So Dataxis is a market research company specialized in media, from telecommunication to streaming. And we also organize online and in-person events that bring together experts and companies to debate over the latest trends and explore new strategic opportunities. So moving on to our topic of the day. First of all, let's have a look at Asia-Pacific regional consumers' habits. And one thing that is very important to remember is that Asia-Pacific is a mobile-driven connectivity market. There is also a high broadband penetration, despite the fact that some markets are still building capacities for fixed networks. And in terms of video, there is a large variety of video streaming services available for Asian audiences, whether on regional platforms such as Viu or Disney Plus Hotstar, which is very popular and expanding at the moment in Asia, and also local actors such as Astrogo in Malaysia or Video in Indonesia. However, overall, SVOD penetration remains low because audiences still prefer free content, which pushes for ad-supported and freemium services. So those characteristics, plus the huge size of the markets, makes it a very interesting playground for advertisers. Now let's review the global advertising market. Globally, ad revenues have been significantly hit by COVID, which for Asia started from late 2019, and which accelerated the trends that were already existing. So for example, digital ad revenues are progressing way faster than TV revenues, which in some markets are already declining. Here you can see the example of the US, which perfectly illustrates that. What that means for traditional TV is that traditional TV actors are migrating toward digital services and adjusting their offers to advertiser. They open new ad inventories on digital pure players, for example, and they're also trying to reach new audiences that don't typically watch TV, such as millennials or the Gen Z or the so-called cord cutters. Those new ad segments in digital also come with automation, such as programmatic ad sales, advanced targeting features, more granular audience metrics, etc. So to be present in a digital environment, what can broadcasters do? There are many solutions. One of them can be to sell their content to an aggregator, which will curate and monetize their content on their own platforms. This has been seen, for example, with big studios like Sony Pictures, which currently licenses older titles from its own library to French AVOD service Molotov. But this means this solution also means that ad sales are outsourced to a third party, and this downside pushes a lot of broadcasters into building their own platform to directly monetize content with end consumers. This also means a broader audiences for broadcasters because you can display your content on multiple screens. And it's also a possibility for advertisers to better target end viewers thanks to metadata brought by digital environments. Also, one of the reasons why broadcasters enter the streaming and digital market is to compete against regional and global powerful actors. And they can do that with streaming because streaming allows a broadcaster to consolidate with other actors, which in the end means that you get a bigger libraries, also more means more possibility to have a broader audience, etc. In Europe, there are a lot of examples to illustrate that. For example, Salto in France, Join in Germany, or BritBox in the UK. This new type of TV services brought to a digital world have a name. They are called BVOD, which stands for Broadcaster Video on Demand. And currently, BVOD is driving the rise of video consumption online with well-known services in the US like Peacock or Tubi, which are set to expand in additional markets. But there are also very famous examples in the world. For example, in MENA with Shahid with over 20 million monthly active users, or the very famous video in Indonesia with over 40 million monthly active users. So yeah, to conclude, naturally, competition on the ad market goes beyond the traditional separation between TV, video, digital, and audio, as the main global actors, the GAFA, are active on all segments at the same time. The GAFA are everywhere, and thus they can prevent local competitors from rising. A good example of that is YouTube, which remain today the #1 ad-supported service in terms of users and revenues. As we have seen during this presentation, however, broadcaster can build new advanced ad inventories on digital platforms. These digital opportunities can also bring new revenue streams to historical local media actors, because broadcasters, which were used to monetize content on their unique markets, can now address audiences further, thanks to network agnostic streaming platforms, which can help them expand their footprint and their revenue streams. I thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question or remarks, do not hesitate to reach out, and I will hand back the mic to Ophélie for the rest of the webinar.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe we can thank you for this presentation, and maybe we can start the discussion by having a short round of the table with our speakers. So please introduce yourself, your position, and let our audience know a little bit more about what you're doing. Famida, do you want to start?
Yes, ladies first. Thank you. It's a privilege to be here, so thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm the CEO of a business called DSTV Media Sales. DSTV Media Sales really provides solutions for commercial airtime inventory, on-air sponsorship opportunities, content integrations, as well as online selling for about 130 channels which exist on the MultiChoice platform. So MultiChoice Group, for the audience in the room, is the largest pay television broadcaster across the continent of Africa. And as the largest pay TV broadcaster, we are in over 21 million homes of which from that 9 million of those homes are in South Africa, and the rest of it is split in between 48 other additional African countries. Some of the large markets that we are in are Nigeria, Kenya, Angola, Zambia, Namibia, to name just a few. So the business is split into what we would call 4 platforms. So there's DSTV, which is your large linear television service. There's DSTV app viewing, which is anything that is seen off a desktop. There's DSTV mobile viewing, which is the same content, but in mobile format. And then there's Showmax, which is our streaming product that is launched within our business and for the African market. I hope that sort of gives a broad context of where the business is, but it is a large pay TV broadcaster on the continent of Africa.
Yeah, pretty much so. Thank you. Prasad?
Hi, I'm Prasad Sanagavarapu. Hi, Famida. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
And I appreciate you having me here on the panel. I'm the Chief Business Officer at InVidi. InVidi provides addressable advertising solutions on linear TV and also on OTT platforms. We operate in various geographies. In fact, in US, we provide advertising solutions to one of the largest satellite providers there, Dish, DirecTV, including Verizon and Frontier. In my role, I work with various broadcasters, operators, and publishers, helping them bootstrap and deploy advertising solutions on linear TV, OTT, and connected TV environments. And my background primarily is in content distribution, content security, advertising solutions, and embedded systems. Okay.
Thank you. Mark?
Thanks so much, and also really honored to be in a panel with Famida and Prasad. It's quite a big deal for me. My name's Mark. I work at Irdeto. I've been in the advertising industry, more specific in the digital advertising industry for over 10 years. I've worked on the buy side. I've worked predominantly in the sell side, and I look after the server-side ad insertion product for Irdeto. Irdeto obviously being primarily a security business and who is exploring new opportunities within the advertising sphere. I also come with obviously a lot of advertising experience and enjoy working with various partners in this exciting world that we're in.
Thank you very much. So just as a reminder to our audience, please enjoy the fact that we have such good speakers available to discussion today. You can ask your questions right now, and you can also reach out to them on social networks or by email if you need to have a more in-depth discussion after that. So my first question would be, why is the advertising industry turning towards advanced products? So we've seen a few examples coming from traditional TV and going towards OTT platforms and setting up ad insertion during this presentation that we had just before. But I would like to focus right now on the speaker we have here with us, representing a big broadcasting group. Famida, can you give us a little bit more background on how the MultiChoice Group is adjusting their traditional TV offer to the current and emerging modes of video consumption?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that when I looked at some of the graphs that were shared earlier, it's not different when we look at some of the trends we're experiencing in terms of television viewership across Africa. So we are seeing that in some markets across the African continent, TV linear viewership is going down, and they're almost big live linearship products are almost restricted to what we would call things that enhance capabilities across social, etc. So those are your large reality type shows, your big sporting events, or anything that where the conversation is absolutely unique. But what we are saying is that the VOD world is definitely growing. And we are seeing that a lot more eyeballs are now going into these spaces. So just almost like a quick snapshot, if we look at our app viewing, because as I mentioned, we have the 4 platforms. So on DSTV app, just a year-on-year comparison, our viewership across the app is up by 40% or so. Our viewership on mobile is up by about 25%, and in some territories that can be as high as 30%. So what we are seeing is that people are leaning towards VOD viewership, and it's important that MultiChoice makes its content available across all these devices. Otherwise, we won't capture sort of new audiences. What's even more critical, and I guess that's the reason for this webinar, is what do we do in the ad sales world? How do we make sure that we are able to monetize those eyeballs, and those eyeballs that are taken into other spaces, whether it's in the VOD world through app viewership, or whether it is in large linear events that are actually broadcast on mobile or on laptop. So it's really about saying that we've got to be able to keep abreast of how consumers are changing. And with that change, we've got to make sure that we can actually take brands and the market along.
Mm-hmm. So you decided to monetize your own digital inventories. What solution did you go for? And can you talk a little bit more about how your ad inventories are now built on digital platforms?
Yeah, so we're at the start of things. So maybe it's the appropriate time to know about what are some of the things to be concerned about. So, I mean, I think Mark can really pick up on the point in terms of what the technical solution looks like. But in simple terms, it's really about us dynamically inserting ads, a different stream of commercials in mobile and in-app viewing in order to monetize those eyeballs differently. So what we are experiencing in advertising is that you have your ratings-based buying, which happens in traditional TV sets. So the advertiser has always experienced that when he gets these other consumers, we've always had to have a manual add back in terms of what the real return on investment is. Now with dynamic ad insertion, what we have is the ability to be able to use that inventory and sweat it out differently. Also being able to sweat out what that target demographic looks like. Because what we experience across the African continent is that your viewer that watches it on the app is predominantly younger. It's a sort of a different target audience group. So you have the ability to attract, I would say, new brands to television in this space. Mark, I don't know if you want to comment on what the actual technical solution looks like for now.
Yeah, so obviously, when we're looking at doing server-side ad insertion for in a broadcast environment, there are technical changes that may need to happen inside your current setup. For example, it's really important to be able to make it the indication of when those ad breaks are coming. Are we able to take that feed and manipulate the manifest to ensure that we're able to insert that unique advertising to each one of those viewers. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into ensuring that the technology is up to scratch. But it is really, as you mentioned, a great place to start when we're looking at monetizing the OTT and online streaming inventory, and to potentially bring in the additional revenue that we want. And also really importantly is to help our advertisers to get that better understanding of how the inventory is working for them, and ensuring that the return on investment is there, and ideally eliminating some of the wastage that they may see in other platforms.
Prasad, I would like to come back to you because you mentioned during your presentation that you are working with various publishers to implement addressable TV solutions. What are they looking into in terms of features? What brings them there? So Famida mentioned a few of them already, but if you can give us some insights about your experience.
Sure. So in fact, like at MultiChoice, we bootstrap some of their ad monetization endeavors there, right? So, but if you take a step back, when you look at the broadcasters in general, right, one of the fundamental shifts that are happening is the audience have many platforms and they're fragmented across many platforms and many channels, right? There are many delivery options to reach to the audience, right? Say if you look at 15 years back, right? You can reach from the advertiser perspective, you can reach your audience at the prime time, probably 40% of your audience in one stroke at prime time. That's not the case anymore, right? The viewer has many touch points for video consumption, the audience are spread. Now that's a pretty big problem when you move from TV space to the digital space. TV is all about reach. Now that reach is right now fragmented, right? And for particularly like the broadcasters who are getting out of the OTT space, they're making their content available, say in simulcast OTT, what we call as OTT live linear, or a time shifted VOD, right? Or a linear TV, connected TV. Now, when you have offerings in so many platforms, the audience right now is distributed and the reach for a broadcaster is suffering. And that's we're seeing everywhere, right? Unlike in the TV. So majorly what we are seeing is broadcasters are now exploring what are the ways to bring my fragmented audience together? Is there any way I can unify them together, right? The first capabilities that we are seeing as like, say in the case of multi-choice, like what Famida's team is doing, after the first steps are done, the next thing is like, now I want to get the reach. I want to get to all my audience in different forums of distribution, right? So what we are seeing is, we are seeing the multi-platform campaigns picking up. So multi-platform campaigns means I should be able to run my campaign both on linear TV as well as on OTT, right? So because that helps you to reach to your frequency goals and the reach goals, right? And with all these platforms and audience distributed, one fundamental problem that broadcasters are also trying to solve is what we call as a common currency, right? In TV, we sell as spots. In digital, we sell as impressions, right? Now, if you want to actually unify them, you need to actually have a common currency across, right? This is where the capability building on most of the broadcasters across the globe is happening, right? Create a common currency. And then when you have a common currency, then you actually can unify the audience. And that's where your lift for ROI comes, right? Return on investment in terms of what you're doing on the digital and linear comes. And more we are seeing as the broadcasters mature, they're investing on technologies and capabilities for defragmenting their audience and creating a common currency, right? And that's probably what we are seeing in terms of like having spots and impressions all unifying, and probably there is an impression-based selling that could happen in near time, even on the linear TV as well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because we talk a lot about addressable TV as in it's bringing more granularity, it's enabling more targeting, etc. But it's also enabling, to build a joint ecosystem throughout all the screens, all the platforms, to touch base with all the different kinds of audiences that we see on different medium.
Right.
So yeah, very interesting. Mark, can you talk a little bit more about what are the technical service providers bringing to the industry? How are they accompanying broadcasters towards this journey throughout addressable TV, how they implement those new features, and maybe giving us a little bit more background on Irdeto and how you got into this new segment of services? So
I think what's really important to note is the relationship with the tech providers and our customers. It's really, there's a lot of trust that needs to be built, and across the advertising ecosystem, we have many technologies that are offering different services, different features. And for me, it's really, the trust is really important. And coming from Irdeto, where, as you know, we work in security, and specifically video security is at the heart of everything we do. We've done it for over 50 years. Specifically, we have a control access product that has evolved from smart card to a software-based one. We have built 360-degree security portfolios. Our DRM product control, tracemark, watermarking, piracy analysis. Very much a lot of things that we work with our customers to ensure that we have that trust, and we build it together. In saying that, also we have taken the experience that we have in these products and thought about where we can carry on to contribute to our customers. And we took DRM, the control product, and we looked at how we were able to deal with a large number of concurrent users, able to deliver certificates, and we assess where that kind of similarity in the advertising market can come into play. And we believe that within a server-side ad insertion, we're able to deal with huge amounts of concurrency, able to deliver millions of impressions to those customers as best as we can. Also, to look at some of our other products, we deal with watermarking, so forensic watermarking, which is specifically dealing with the manifest, which is the mechanism of how we deliver the stream to the player. And we have a lot of experience with the manifest. And if we look at server-side ad insertion, that is really critical when it comes to stitching the advertisements into those live streams. And I really think that with all the different industries that are involved in the TV broadcasting, both from an OTT and satellite perspective, we need to kind of pitch together and build these products that are going to be really helpful and suitable to our operators and customers who are looking for the best possible way to deliver advertising, and at the end of the day, sure, make additional revenue, but also to make the user experience better for the user at the other side of the screen who is watching advertising specific to them and not wasting airtime.
If we stay on this technical detail, maybe can you give us a little bit more insight on what is actually server-side ad insertion, and how does it bring a better product to broadcasters?
Sure, and I don't think it's necessarily a better product, but very different ways of delivering ads to the user. So we have an ad space or a holder that the user is exposed to, and it can be done on a website, it can be done on through a display banner, or it can be an interstitial when we open up an app. And in this case, it's a live stream, either on a smart TV or an Android device, and particularly you would be exposed to an ad break during a halftime, during your football game, or between overs in a cricket match. And what happens from a server side perspective is we would take the manifest that indicates which segments that need to play out, and we're able to take a marker that is passed down from the packager that will show, it's called a SCTI-35 marker in this instance, and it will indicate how long the break will be. And we're able to make a vast request to an ad server that will create a playlist of ads that will insert for that duration. And we're able to then take the manifest from the specific player or user and change it to ensure that that ad plays to that specific device. So inevitably creating addressable TV. And this happens quite seamlessly. You don't have a challenge of change in video quality, audio levels are all the same. It's very seamless. And also one of the perks is that we're able to eradicate ad blocking, and I guess in a live environment, if you had to block your ads, you would just have a blank screen. But it's really great to have the addressable ads in that environment. And then if we're looking at a client-side ad insertion, this is specifically done on a player side where potentially a feed may actually stop and make an ad request to the server, and then we'll insert the ad on a player level. Potentially you would need SDKs installed across all the players that an operator may have. This can cause challenges. As you guys may know, there's many different ways to play out a video, and potentially you may not be able to cover them all. With the server side, we're able to reach as many devices and players as we can without having to make any kind of customization. And so on the client side, the ad will then play. And once the ad is completed, then the player will return to the feed. There are a lot of benefits to this client-side ad insertion as well. We can do a lot more engagement with users. There's also really great ways of tracking ad completions, ad viewability, things that are really important to the advertiser. And us as Irdeto, I think we're really, really excited to see how those features can roll out into the server-side ad insertion going forward, as it's really important to our advertisers, and we believe with our knowledge we can do these things.
I guess the most important thing is that I know Mark's covered the technical aspect of it. The important thing from a business perspective is that we want to be able to make more money. And we know that our audiences are moving into digital spaces. So the broad-based approach from our side is that if we wait until linear keeps on eroding, because revenues across linear television are moving to digital spaces, and if we don't have technical solutions that allow us or enable us to make more money, I think we are not building anything sustainable for the future. So it's really about protecting us. And I think you mentioned it quite nicely in your slides up front against the GAFA, so the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, etc. They will steal broadcasters' lunch. So we've got to be able to say that we can insert advertising in premium video. And our video is premium compared to what you would find on Google. And that really has been the premise of what broadcasting has been about. So we are more excited about the revenue generation opportunity that dynamic ad insertion does give us.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Prasad, now that we touched base on what the product technically is, can you tell us a little bit more of how operationally it's working, how it was implemented? So what kind of projects you already worked on, and how did you see the early deployments of Addressable TV already evolve, I guess, because things are changing quite fast in this environment?
Very true. In fact, to Fahmida's point, right, the TV is actually morphing into most of the broadcasters are realizing that, look, as Fahmida has put it more nicely there, the lunch is being eaten by the GAFAs of the world, right? So you need to protect the premium nature of TV, right? The TV has a very premium nature to a program, and that needs to get carried on to the OTT linear inventory as well, right? Having said that, as you just asked me, so we at InVidi, we have been doing advanced advertising or addressable advertising for the past 20 years, right? And we have seen the capabilities grow from a pure basic zone targeting on set-top boxes, essentially saying like if the set-top box is in certain geography, let's send a specific ad there, to more evolved mechanisms called aggregation, right? So if I have multiple network channels, can I actually look at the entire inventory, and then can I actually bring the impressions together and also audience together, right? So we have seen the evolution from a basic geo-targeting to a much more evolved aggregation. So what also happened is the addressable advertising market, particularly in the linear TV, also grew into a couple of $1 billion industry right now, with some of our customers probably are getting about 4x and sometimes even 8x on their normal spots. An addressable spot is almost like 8x of the normal spot, right? But the advanced advertising on linear TV is a little more complex in nature because the distribution mechanism is dependent on the current environment or the current context, right? Because most of the set-top boxes are not connected. When you actually look at OTT, they are connected, right? And there's also a very primitive nature to the set-top boxes. So it adds a bit of complexity to how the implementation happens. So we do have multiple ways of distributing the ad, what we call as a forward and store, satellite switching, and head-end multiplexing. But when you move into the OTT world, like advanced advertising is less complex, right? Because there's a network connectivity there to the end device. We have an OTT solution, pure OTT solution we call as Pulse, which is singularly focused on ad monetization. In fact, like the Pulse is very strongly integrated with Irdeto's SSAI solution. And together we provide a comprehensive server-side ad insertion technology along with ad decisioning as well, right? But this is something that we introduced in 2017, the Pulse product. And then, in fact, like in one hand, we manage like billions of impressions on the linear TV for advanced advertising. On the other hand, we also manage billions of impressions on the OTT side of things, right? But again, when you look at the growth of this market from the broadcaster perspective, right? The advanced advertising allows you to actually right now say like, look, my audience, I go back to my previous theme of like, my audience are there in both OTT and linear, right? What do I do with my audience, right? So right now, so we also offer something called a single order line. You can create an order line that says like, I need to actually have 100,000 impressions going on to linear TV and another 50,000 going on to the OTT for a given same audience profile. So essentially, like now we are moving away from saying, is it a linear TV or is it an OTT, but more looking at where is my audience? Because addressability is about delivering the right message at the right time to the right audience. That is addressability. It doesn't matter what the distribution platform is. When you take that perspective, right, the capabilities that you're using on the linear TV in terms of ad sales, ad business models, they start translating onto the OTT models as well, right? And this is where we are seeing like the convergence of OTT and linear coming in. And that's where the capability building or advanced advertising is actually moving towards, right? A case in point is something we call as OAR, right? Open Addressable Ready. These are actually TVs, in some cases like a Visio TV that is OAR ready, where the broadcast stream comes, but the advertising comes on the broadband streams, right? So essentially you're converging them together. HBB TV is another standard like that. So this is where we have seen the capabilities grow, and it actually helps the broadcaster and also the operator by the fact that I'm able to address my audience not in silos. I'm able to address the audience holistically, and it also helps the advertiser as well.
Yeah, that also goes back to one of the comments that you made before in terms of reach. TV is losing its reach, its audiences, but bringing the inventories that we have on traditional TV and on OTT platforms together will sort of make this problem way less important in the future.
Right.
Maybe you can also tell us a little bit more about the specific opportunities that you see in the Asian markets. You talked about the fact that addressable TV deployments will rely a lot on context, on this TV distribution circumstances, depending on the market. How do you see it working in Asia?
So when we look at the Asian region, right, it's one of the strongest pay TV penetrated markets, right? We have about like 600 million subs and almost like 60% household reach, one of the strongest pay TV markets. In fact, like if you look at other US or European markets, the pay TV is not growing. In fact, it's shrinking a lot. But surprisingly, in the Asian region, the pay TV is still growing, right? There might be many reasons. First of all, like there is this tradition of multi-generational family structures, right? And then you still have analog to digital conversions happening in places like Indonesia. So with all that put together, the pay TV is fairly very strong. Now, I can't dismiss the fact that the OTT is also equally growing, right? And that's more so in Asian region because it's the mobile broadband penetration and the number of mobile users in the Asian region are significantly higher than any part of the world, right? The largest number of mobile users here. And when that is happening because of the mobile broadband penetration and the normal broadband penetration, you also have connected TV market growing here, right? So you, in one hand, you have pay TV growing, you have mobile broadband penetration growing, you also have a connected TV growth, right? And so for a broadcaster, right, when you look at the broadcaster, when I'm trying to get into the OTT market, right, I need to pay attention to these different things happening. I can't ignore pay TV. I can't ignore my mobile users there because they need a OTT as well. I can't ignore my connected TV. This I see as a stark contrast as to what happened in US and Europe, because it's a very phase-wise approach. I have pay TV started shrinking, then mobile started growing. And now from mobile, you have everything moving to the connected TV. But in Asian region, you have all three growing at a time, right? And this, in some ways, I don't think it's a challenge. It's more like an opportunity here, right? Now, it's a way to actually bring my business models and sales models that worked on TV and bring them together onto the connected TV market and the mobile TV market, right? And so, in fact, like we are encouraging broadcasters to say, like, okay, don't disrupt your current business models because your current business models on TV, they have been working fine. Let us actually start mapping onto the OTT world, right? I think Famida might relate to this more because, like, in the TV market, is a very structured way of doing ad sales, right? And when you actually take this structured way and then start mapping onto the digital, you don't have to disrupt any current business models, right? And that's what we see in the Asian region happening, right? So more and more broadcasters are saying, like, can I unify my sales teams between broadcast sales versus OTT sales instead of creating two different silos, right? Because I can actually leverage what is happening on the OTT, on the digital, on the linear and linear versus digital. And that's what we're seeing in the market.
Yeah, I think if I can just add to what Prasad is saying, because we are currently on that journey, and we're calling it our digital transformation journey within DSTV Media Sales.
Right.
And I would like to just give advice to everyone in the virtual room. This is a test and learn situation. There's no absolute correct way to do things, and there's no incorrect way to do things. I think we started the approach with saying, let's unify our sales teams. And then we realized that actually the conversations that happen in terms of digital sales are largely quite different from how they happen in terms of traditional TV selling. So it's something that we are upskilling our staff to be able to manage what we would call top line queries. But what we find in our world is that you absolutely need specialist skills within your business to take your business forward. So even though you may have the most talented individuals in your sales teams, or you may have got a way that has worked before, it is important to invest in external skills that you haven't had in your business, and to also create sort of specialist units that go after this type of business. Because what will happen, especially if you are in a situation where a large part of your revenue still come from linear ad sales, is that will always be the bigger voice in the room. And what you might forget about is that the smaller voices, which are sitting in this sort of digital world, etc., are going to grow louder, and you're not going to be able to play in that world if you don't place a specific focus on that. So the advice I can give to people in the room is that you need to attract specialist skills. You need to find a way in which people work towards a unified vision. But in terms of getting the market along, invest in education in the marketplace, getting people to understand what server-side ad insertion does, what dynamic ad insertion does, how addressability works in their worlds, because you are going to be taking the lead in your various markets. And when you take the lead in your market, the hard part about it is that nobody else has done it before. So you are always in that test and learn stage, but you've got to invest in it because you know that the future is there. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on all that revenue.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Famida, for this statement. So yeah, you all mentioned a lot of prospective work has to be done still. A lot of test and learn will happen in the next few years, and we see that it will impact ad sales in ways that we don't already imagine yet. What are the lessons that you've learned from the early deployment so far, and in your respective markets, and how do you see the next challenge? Where do you see the next challenges popping up? Maybe Famida, if you want to start on that.
I think that we shouldn't be, we should understand that the market always just wants to pay less for more. And that sort of conversation is constantly going to come up. So when you go to an advertiser proposing that you're now going to charge separately for dynamically inserting different commercial ads into a stream that they got before, these are the hard conversations to have. So the lessons that we've learned is that take people early along in the journey, make sure that they completely understand that we're building a new set of customers for them, explain the differences in audiences from what your linear audience looks like versus the digital audiences, show the duplication, also show the extended reach, build a sort of video stack. And when we talk about the video stack, I think Prasad mentioned it earlier as well, is that the advertiser is just saying, give me what my return on investment is. Tell me that if TV is sold in spots, that means ratings is your currency. If digital is sold in impressions, then that's your currency. So how is it that you mix the two together? So what we've done personally from our side is we built our own internal calculator. We call it the video allocator. So from that video allocator, we're able to say so many eyeballs watch this piece of content in the digital space, so many eyeballs watch this piece of content in a normal TV lean back experience. And if you had to add those up sort of manually, that's what your delivered reach is. So I think it's about taking people along early, and it's really about saying, build a video stack within, invest in education. You're going to have to educate the market. Those conversations are going to be uncomfortable for some. For some, they would see it as an opportunity to get their hands on premium inventory that they were not able to afford on traditional TV. So that's the exciting part. How do you bring new advertisers along? Also, I would say from an internal process point of view, change up what's happening currently in the sales in your unit. Give people specific tasks to go out and find new sorts of advertisers that have not considered TV before, because now they can be in-app advertisers, they can be SMEs that come on board, etc. So think differently, think with different breadth, I would say.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what Famida has built there is basically currency exchanger there between spots and impressions, right? And that's a first start, right? And then in terms of the lessons, we have seen many broadcasters deploy. We have seen some broadcasters fail, some broadcasters have been extremely successful, right? But the core theme is like, it takes a village to grow a service, right? It literally takes a village to grow a service. And then day one is never about revenue generation. That's something that the broadcasters need to realize, that day one is about ensuring you have the right processes and systems in place, and also you have the right partners around you, right? And then I think Famida also touched upon this thing, is understanding your audience is the key, right? You need to know who is watching the content, when they're watching, and what they are watching, right? And we use this common phrase called crawl, walk, and run, right? Which essentially is like, initially take it easy, right? Don't try to solve everything in the day one. Start simple. The pre-rolls, mid-rolls, post-rolls, and sponsorships are just good enough to get started, right? Other ad formats can come later, right? And more importantly, when we are talking about SSAI and CSAI, the user experience is key, right? The ad insertion, the stitching, and should not take away the user experience. It has to be a very seamless experience. And one thing that Famida touched upon that I want to reinforce is educating the market. This is extremely important, right? Because as I said, it takes a village to grow a service. It essentially means like you have an ecosystem of players around you or partners who help you to grow. And excuse me, they all need to be educated, and investing into the education internally in the organization and externally is very critical for any service to grow, right? And those primarily what I think are essential that we have learned along the way.
Mark, as a technical service provider, what did you see with your first clients, and what are the challenges that you're looking forward to tackle with them?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how all our customers are quite unique in what they have and all the different components that go into putting out the service that they do. And I think it's really, whilst exciting, it's extremely challenging to go through those different components, understand how it works, how many people play a part in getting that feed out and those markers in the feed to ensure that ads are inserted. And it really is an extremely big team effort to make these things work, and the amount of people that are contributing towards making this product work is really incredible, and that's still not taking into consideration the additional ad technologies that will come and that will need to plug into the current setup that's in place. So I think it's about ensuring that the broadcast or the product is well-oiled machine and everyone is working well together, and the vision is understood by all. As Famida and Prasad have alluded to, it's a journey, and we go there together, and we have a clear goal in mind, and we know that we're going to have challenges and there are going to be obstacles in that path, but there's also exciting new learnings that will happen. And for us, it's been really great to see our product doing what it's doing. It really helps us to understand the challenges. And again, we're going to have a lot more challenges in the future, and we look forward to that. And I really think it's a great journey to go on.
Yeah, it's really about bringing the technical and operational aspect together to make sure everyone is in line.
Yeah.
We had a question from our audience. Also, feel free to ask more if for the ones which are still with us. So Mark mentioned that Irdeto server-side ad insertion circumvents ad blockers. How big of an issue are ad blockers now?
So ad blockers is one of those contentious topics. I think a lot of publishers or media owners will say, if a user doesn't want to see the ad, why should we make them see the ad? So that is a mindset. But I think what's quite interesting is that the amount of users out there that are actively blocking ads, and specifically it happens in a client-side ad insertion space. Browsers are downloaded off app stores with ad blockers in place without even doing anything. And so it's an active decision that is made. And I think with GDRP being at the forefront of a lot of publishers' minds, it's important to at least adhere to what the user wants. We see numbers of 257 million desktops and 580 odd million mobile users are using ad blockers actively at this point in time, which is incredible. But I think what is more of a problem for me is let's let the user make that decision, but let's not put our products in jeopardy of having ad fraud, because this is what can come through these kinds of attacks on products. We see incredible numbers of millions of dollars being spent by advertisers on digital that's going to pirates, people who are hacking the programmatic streams and and delivering ads to no one. And what's really nice about server-side ad insertion is because we're inserting ads at a server level, we're able to have less of that, right? And in doing so, we're enabling our advertisers to spend their money knowing that their ads are at least going to be hopefully in front of the right person, but at least on the platform, and not going to some random place or into some pirate's pocket. And a lot of our customers are premium broadcasters and have premium content, and we're talking about Premier League, IPL, incredible events, and so to enable to ensure that we don't have that kind of piracy and losing millions of dollars is really important to everyone in this advertising ecosystem. So I guess I would say that let the ad blockers block the ads, but let's just ensure that we're not enabling fraud across the whole advertising ecosystem. And server-side does help eradicate that. But I'm sure Prasad has some thoughts on that as well.
I think you covered it well, Mark. Yeah.
Thanks. We also had a question about the recording of the session. We will, of course, send a catch-up session to all of the participants and attendees, and also all the registered people who could not join the live session. So that should come by tomorrow. Don't worry about this. Then we also have another question about the role of system integrators in the digital transformation journey. Does anyone want to come up with that? What is the role of system integrators in this journey?
Sure, it's an interesting one. Prasad, I don't know if you have any input on that specifically.
No, they actually play a very key role because they bring the experience of implementing at multiple deployments. So they have a very key role in terms of actually identifying the right processes, the right technologies, and bringing in the right vendors. So they have a very key role in the digital transformation journey. So I'm very appreciative of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the trick is to be able to work quite closely with the system integrators to understand. I would imagine that every single business is going to be unique depending on their workflow, etc. So
correct.
All right, we're getting to the end of the session, so I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any more questions, you can reach out to our speakers individually on other platforms. And yeah, feel free to watch the session again if you want to get more insight or share it with colleagues. Thank you very much, Famida, Prasad, and Mark for being with us today. And have a good day or good evening wherever all of you are based.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.